Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Truck Before. This time, we wrapped up season 7 last week. Actually, we're wrapping up today. We're talking about the whole season. We're getting into it, wrapping it up. Season 7 of Next Generation, Star Trek Next Generation. Get us to season 7. Actually, we're past season 7. Get us to 7 more seasons. Come Patreon member, patreon.com/IABD. Just a few bucks a month. It doesn't, less than a cup of coffee. You could buy, you couldn't even buy a cup of coffee like you can do to become a Patreon member. Plenty of tiers out there. Captain, Admiral, those aren't the actual names, but you'll feel that way if you join us. Patreon.com/IABD. Join us now. We're discussing it. Season 7, TNG. It's All Been Trucked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We are here to talk about the 7th season of Star Trek The Next Generation, the final season, if you will. Wrapping it up, deciding what we liked about it, what we didn't, ranking it amongst the other seasons. Let's go with first impressions of the final season. If you'll give me a sentence or two to sum up how you're feeling about the final season, I think that's a good place to start.
There were some high highs and a lot of, you could feel the fatigue of this is the 7th season. Movies are coming. And not wanting to start necessarily a new arc. Definitely some great episodes as I looked at it last night, and then a lot of not good, and then some really bad ones. So.
I don't think I disliked it as much as you, or as passionately as you, I should say, but certainly, it certainly left things to be desired.
I mean, I didn't hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Even the worst episode of the season, which we have as Sub Rosa, is watchable-ish. Like there's nothing to the level of Tomorrow Is Yesterday or whatever I really hate, or Charlie X. Like there's nothing to that level for me. I don't think it had a lot of strong in it. I'm looking at the rankings, I would say it had 4 good episodes out of 25. And that's not a good ratio. So I'd say it went out more with a whimper than with a bang. However, those 4 episodes are really good, and I would say all 4 rank among my favorite episodes of the series, which we'll do next week when we do the series wrap up. But those 4 were really good. I guess I would say it's an uneven season, a little bit below average. But it ended well. The series finale was good.
Yeah, and I'm with you looking at our spreadsheet. The top 4 really great. Then after that, to me in my mind, just and again with generic titles, I think a few like, okay, these were solid, and then we get into some that just missed what they were doing, and then we get into crazy episodes, and then we get into bad episodes. So like Dark Pages one, which I think we've got at 18 for the season, which had some heavy big stuff in it, but also wasn't necessarily a great episode, but I didn't hate it.
No, not at all. I mean,
Sub Rosa,
I would watch again. Like, there's nothing in this season that's really, really terrible. It's just a very mediocre season.
I think Sub Rosa might be. It puts me in the mind of In the Children Shall Lead, and I cannot turn away from this. I don't know what the hell's going on here, but I cannot turn away, and not just because of Gates McFadden, but it is just Yeah,
it makes me think Outlander, but not in a good way. Not good by comparison, because I love Outlander, but. Yeah. So let's talk about the top 4, because we brought it. 2 of us have mentioned it now. Number 1 we have for the season is All Good Things. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is Lower Decks. I'd say a close number 2, quite honestly. Number 3 is Pegasus, or The Pegasus. I think it's The Pegasus. I wrote Pegasus.
I think it is.
Which I now understand why Enterprise chose that episode to call back to. Like, that was a really, really good episode. I had no idea. And then Preemptive Strike, the Row episode, comes in at number 4. Those are really good, but we go as low as 5 because a lot of times we talk about the top 5 episodes. 5 is Parallels, where Worf's like shifting through different timelines. It's good, but it's not great in my opinion. I mean, I think one of the big weaknesses of that is the having him and Troy in a relationship, which they followed up upon, because I never liked that. And without that, maybe I would be a lot more comfortable having that in the top 5.
I was surprised in looking, and this is just me not remembering very well, but the episode where Data loses his memory.
Thine Own Self. We came in number 6 for that.
Yeah, in my mind, I'm like, I don't think I like that one that much. But maybe there was that may have been one of those where there were elements I did not love, but came around on it.
Yeah,
But
6 seems a little high for that. I can't believe it's above like Gambit Part 1 and 2, but at the same time, like I do think there were some compelling parts of that one,
yes.
even though overall it wasn't extraordinarily well done.
And Liaisons, that's another one which is right in there. We have it at number 7.
Yep.
Was good. It was a good episode. The 3 aliens kind of, and again, this is the thing I hate, but I still like this one, testing, the humans, but again, not one I'd be like, oh, that's right up there. But again, I think now we're into the good, for me, what I thought were good episodes. Then it gets a little crazy, and then, like I said, just bad, and then Sub Rosa, a lot crazy.
I do have a theory about that. Then, really,
Yes.
The unknown self. I don't recall ever really coming up. I think what happens is some of those just get lost in the shuffle.
Mhm. Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is a good episode. Let's start up all the way up here. This is a bad one. Let's start all the way down here. And this one was just sort of like lost in the middle, and we never like touched on it again to really compare it, I think. So it got stuck at 6.
I think that's a good point. Yeah.
Well, it came 2/3 of the way through the season too, so there wasn't as much opportunity to do that. But I think you make a good point. Liaisons, Thine Unself, Gambits part. I remember Gambits 1 and 2 being fun. I'm actually the one that stands out to me as I'm looking across is Descent is number 15, Descent Part 2. And I hated that one. Like I would rank that lower than Sub Rosa, honestly, off the top of my head. So despite Hugh, despite lore. I feel like that's when I got moved on or voted on, but
I think so.
Probably. But yeah, to me, that's up there with like Times Arrow as a really crappy 2-parter they shouldn't have done.
Yeah. Times Arrow did a lot worse.
On the subject of
I don't know that speaks to the season. Yeah, Times Arrow Part 2. Part 2.
That was the beginning of season 6, but was it a lot worse?
I don't know if it was a lot worse as an episode, but we ranked it a lot lower.
It was ranked lower. I think it was about the same as an episode.
I think that they're comparable. I think that's So maybe season 6 was better than we remember.
No, that would be the opposite, right? If season no, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right. If the 4 from the bottom is equal to like 10 from the bottom, then yeah, you're right. You're right.
I liked the idea of the Troy and Worf relationship. And
you did?
I think yes, I did. I think the nostalgia of it, or rather my faded memory of it, was stronger than what it actually was. Having seen some of the episodes a couple of times, or rather, the way the things would bounce around in syndication, and it made it feel like it was more involved than it actually was. And I think that it could have been better if they. I think they were just too afraid to do anything with it. And they just kind of sort of kept dipping their toes in for whatever reason, and just not really committing. And I think that's what ended up coming across is, well, yes.
Honestly, what I remember about the Worf-Troy relationship comes more from the novels than the show. I feel like the show barely touched it.
Right.
But I don't love it, but I do wonder if it's because of my knowledge of just my love of Riker Troy, both on page and then Star Trek we haven't watched yet, of their relationship. And also, Worf has a relationship in Deep Space Nine that I really love. And so maybe those two things are coloring. Like, I like Troy better with Riker because I've seen stuff we haven't seen yet. I like Worf better with this other person. Again, stuff we haven't seen yet. So I don't know. If I were taking it just on its own, maybe I wouldn't be so hateful.
I think I liked the idea of the change of pace of what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
And again, giving Worf something more to do and fleshing out his character, but that's a very good point about the other things. I mean, there are so many other better and more beloved examples of what those characters are going to be. I mean, as far as their relationships with other people.
And I think there is something. I think you just made this point, Keith, that, or maybe both you guys did, kind of that they kind of half-weighed it. With the relationship, and like if they'd taken the big swing and like this is happening now and really jumped up those stakes, but like I said, they kind of red kryptonited it in I think it was All Good Things, and even Parallels was one where it's like alternate universe, oh, they're together, what do you think of this, almost like sending a trial balloon, like, hey, what would you think if this happened, kind of a thing.
even all good things. Like there was tension between Riker and Worf. We
Yeah.
found that's because she died, but it was not a major plot point of the episode, and it should have been.
Right.
It should have been more central to the story.
Yeah.
And I think that would have made me invest in it more.
Yeah.
I didn't love. You're right. I absolutely hate that they like teased it and didn't go for it.
Mhm.
And that without spoiling, I think it's safe to say that Worf and Troy's relationship, while it will be mentioned again in the future, it already peaked. We've already seen as much as they're going to get into it.
Yeah.
There's not more development coming on that front. But I do think from a certain perspective, Keith's point about Worf development, Worf had like a few seasons there where he was more central and might have been my favorite character for a season or two. And then they did kind of not do a lot with him in the last season or two. And that's annoying. And this was their attempt. And if they'd really done a running arc this season where she was helping him with his son and they fell for each other, I think that could have been really good, but they didn't. So it's right. Like it's just.
I just thought of another point along what you were saying about knowing more about like the book and some other things that are going to happen. I found myself doing that for certain kinds of like the closest analog I can think of is comic book adaptations and things like that. You're seeing, I know that these two characters are supposed to be together, like the relationship that shows up later. This is iconic, and then they keep kind of messing around with. Well, it's like the Clark Kent and Chloe thing. It's like, okay, that's all right. All right, fine, but that's not what's supposed to happen.
Right.
So I don't really like. Come on, let's get to the that kind of thing. So.
Well, to be fair, when Next Gen went off the air, we never knew they would go there with Riker and Troy. Like they could have been putting the past to bed, and that would have been a valid way to take the story if the chemistry between Sirtis and Franks weren't so strong. Like when they do scenes together where they're caring about each other, it is so damn strong. And it would have been cool to be like, okay, we're moving on and that's it, instead of revisiting the past. But they didn't do that. And because they went back to it in the films and later, I'm a big fan of the way it turned out. So
yeah,
I will say if we measure Troy's screen time from here till the end of the franchise, it's possible. I'm not saying for sure. I'd have to go like do some run some numbers, but it's possible she has more screen time coming up with Barclay than Riker.
Interesting.
That's funny.
Right? All those Voyager episodes. Anyway, so let's look at the bottom 5, because I think, do we agree that the top 5 are correct? Like, is there anything that we're like, how'd that end up in the top 5?
No, I feel pretty good about those. Yeah. Because I remember Parallels to me being a lot of fun in my mind. And yeah.
If it wasn't for the Worf Troy thing, I think I'd feel a lot more comfortable with it being up there. But I'm looking at the list. I don't see anything else that I'm like, that should have been 5 instead. Like, I just don't. The top 4, though, are 4 really good episodes. I love I'm sad Ro's only in 1 episode, but what a great episode for Ro.
Yeah.
If she wasn't going to do Deep Space Nine, I'm glad she got this wrap up. I mean, Pegasus, we'll revisit.
Yeah. I mean, what a bummer it would have been if Ro comes back for a lame just a half, just a so-so episode. It's like, oh, she's back for 1 episode, and that's just okay.
They put her in Parallels with Worf instead.
That's
no. Right. Honestly, if Ro had been a main character and they got her and Riker together, I could have been a fan of that, and then not thought twice about Worf and Troy. Right?
Certainly.
Yes.
Yeah. They were they had some good chemistry.
Yeah.
I love Michelle Forbes. Like I said, we'll see her again in the Star Trek franchise. It's just going to be a long time. So yeah. Okay, so we were solid in the top 5. Let's bottom 5 from 5 worst to the bottom. Bloodlines, Force of Nature, Journey's End, Wesley's final episode, The Interface, and Sub Rosa. Considering I don't even remember what happened in 3 of these 5, I'm comfortable.
Bloodlines is they pretend Picard has a son.
Right. Jason. Yes.
Yeah.
That was not good. Not well done.
Huh.
It's funny though, because like Kirk had the secret son, and Kirk was much less of a player in his younger days than Picard was.
Yeah.
So Picard's secret son's more believable, and yet I still enjoy Kirk's secret son better than Picard's secret son. Also, it felt like repetition because Kirk did it first.
If they have the presence of mind to do those sorts of things intentionally, it can be fun. Playing off your expectations.
Mhm.
They know that you know that they're trying to do this thing, but you're going to assume it's going to go this way, but it doesn't, because that sort of thing,
Mhm.
which I think is maybe what they did. But I can't remember what exactly was wrong with it. I think it was something about the execution. I think it was something about the certain little plot holes, or some of the behaviors didn't track, or they should have another.
It never felt like it just never felt like, oh, that's definitely his son.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It didn't, and some of that's probably
Patrick
just
Stewart
like,
did his best. It wasn't
yeah,
Patrick Stewart's
yeah,
fault.
yeah,
But yeah, I agree with
I do recall that. That's what it was.
yeah,
There were some scenes where he was really just swinging for the fences and connecting, but it
yeah,
just didn't. Right. There's some
yeah.
other things about the story itself that kept pulling it.
And
Absolutely.
the guy that played his son was okay, but he was no Merritt Buttrick. R.I.P.
I mean, honestly, I don't think Merritt Buttrick's a great actor, but I
but he
really
was,
like.
yeah.
I really like. I mean, I didn't love him in the Next Gen episode. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm
Oh,
not
right,
happy that he's back, right?
Yeah.
But there, I think what I liked about his performance is what it did for Shatner's performance.
Yes.
I think Shatner was so good handling that story arc
Mm-hmm.
that it overcame Merrick Butler's shortfalls.
Yeah.
I don't think Merrick Butler was the one that sold that plot.
Yeah, I think it was Shatner and BB Besh. Their relationship made you believe that. Yeah,
their chemistry was wonderful, and yeah, Shatner, who we'd loved forever, just killed it. That was. This may be an unpopular opinion, maybe it's not. I don't know, but I think that was some of Shatner's best acting in the franchise was playing the father.
I agree, and that was in my mind. There was Trek fans at that time were like, we think he might get an Oscar nomination. It was like when RDJ, they talked about it for Endgame, but this was, before genre movies got those kind of noms, but everyone was like, yeah, this guy, I mean, I just think he's so good in it. He's got all the Kirk stuff, and then he adds those other layers to it. And again, I think I talked about this when we did that. I think it's being that age, and he was feeling all of that. He'd been on that journey literally, and
he's been on that Star Trek.
I'm like too old to be gallivanting around the cosmos, but he kept doing it for a while, thankfully. Actually, I guess
ended up going to space 30 years later, right?
Yeah, he's literally gallivanted around the cosmos very recently.
Around the cosmos, you use that loosely.
Well,
he technically made it into what is technically space.
Technically space, yeah. Another one in our bottom 5 is Force of Nature, which is the kind of the climate change episode, the one about warp drive being harmful to the universe. And I remember I think we just thought it was a flat episode that had one really cool thing about it and had a B story that didn't have anything to do with the A story. It was just, yeah. I'm still kind of
concept poorly executed.
Yeah. And then Journey's End is the Native Americans that settle on another planet.
My God, that was so mishandled. It was so mishandled. Like, whether you like Wesley or not, he deserved to come back for a great final episode. And the fact that he got that ticks me off to no end.
Yeah. And I think I said it in the episode, I'm a defender of the Paradise Syndrome, which isn't a perfect episode either of TOS, but that made the Paradise Syndrome look like Macbeth.
Or at least a Macbeth quote or something.
Yeah. Don't say Paradise Syndrome backstage at a show. Just say. And then Interface, I think we all remember that was Geordie's mom.
Oh, that was so bad. I would rank that below Sub Rosa.
Yeah.
That to me was the weakest of the season. I disagree that we put Sub Rosa last. I would have put Interface last.
I thought Interface had a few moments and then it just kept going in circles. Sub Rosa, and maybe I'll change my mind. You guys, I changed my mind about it in the Children Shall Lead. I mean, a little bit. It's not my least favorite TOS episode anymore.
I'm pretty sure I agree with you on that, Stephen. Just Sub Rosa, just I mean, it's between that and Inherent or Interface. I mean, I think Interface had more substance to it.
Yeah,
at least what was going on.
I think I said it felt like it was a spec script that somebody wrote for another show, and the Star Trek writers saw, or the people at Star Trek, and I can't remember who actually wrote it, but it just felt like, oh, I'm going to write a script that, what was you made the reference, Jimmy? It reminds you. Yeah, Outlander, which is a lot later, obviously, but I know there were other shows like that back in the mid
It
90s.
was Rodney Moore, Outlander, Star Trek.
Oh wow!
I think I zeroed in
Oh,
on
that's it.
what bothered me about Sub Rosa.
Okay.
What I vaguely remember. I think I was even kind of distracted as far as that was. Right. So it was such a forced situation as far as
Mhm.
the behavior, the conceit of the environment and everything they were being put in, and just those. If there's like an opposite of like a Bechdel conversation, that whatever that would be,
Mhm.
those kinds of moments, and just I don't know it was sort of like the red kryptonite effect. I think is what you would call it, something like that between
Yeah.
Picard and the Crusher. That something just felt very uncomfortable about what they were trying to force there, or her just like going off on him about just not supporting the romance and other things. Just like okay, or it's my choice. I can just leave the ship. I'm gone, quitting. Bye. Just okay. It's hard to buy, I guess, too as well.
Mhm.
I don't disagree with you, Keith. I think where I rank that a little higher to me is I've got a weakness for the Scottish history stuff. Again, love Outlander, and that may have been playing on that bit for me, even though it's not a good episode. It's not a good Star Trek episode, but it's Gates McFadden in that setting, and that appeals to me in a way that I would rewatch it. Whereas I felt like Geordi and his mom was just so mishandled and so poorly done. It doesn't have the rewatchability for me. But I agree, they're both terrible episodes.
So
One of them just has more things that appeal to me than the other.
I brought up Trek. Oh, sorry, Keith.
No, that's an interesting point about it not being a good Star Trek episode.
Hmm.
Maybe an X-Files or something like that. Not even quite that, but not something that's supposed to be in that genre. I think it would be salvageable. But it felt so out of place, I guess, is what jarring.
Mhm.
That's probably what
Absolutely.
it was. Then.
Absolutely. And it wasn't good either. Like even in a good show, it would have felt bad because it's a bad episode, period. I will not fight that. It's just bad. But it had those elements that I really like, even if they were poorly executed. Whereas I don't feel like
I think the reason why they were poorly executed is because they were forcing characters into roles they shouldn't have been in. Is all. I mean, I think that if they were completely different people, it wouldn't have felt as, Sorry, Stephen.
Don't disagree.
No, so I found this, and this is just one man's opinion on TrekRanks.com. He ranked all 176 episodes, 1 to 176. Sub Rosa's 173.
We're not doing that. That's crazy. That's insane.
Like I said,
do that.
40 years ago, I had 45 years ago, 40 some years ago, I ranked every episode. I ranked every season kind of like we did. And then I had it 1 to 79 for the original
But
series.
that was only 79 episodes. That's different than 176.
It is. This guy tried it.
A little bit.
A lot of his are in our bottom. The one that's Sub Rosa is not dead last for him or her. I'm sure. Code of Honor is below that, which
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, next week we'll talk about what the worst episode of the series is.
Yeah.
But I will say right now, I love Sub Rosa so much more than Code of Honor.
For sure. Aquiel is in there, which is one I know, imaginary friend. Surprising to me is how it's still in his bottom 10, but it's a lot higher ranked. Shades of Grey is not his least favorite. And then there's a couple
of those you just mentioned. I could see an argument for maybe, possibly, like Code of Honor, Shades of Grey. I don't know. That's a tough call.
Then there's a couple in here that I liked and we liked. The Naked Now was his third from the bottom. And I'm like, that was our third rank for the season 1. And then this is a very personal one. He's got Justice at 166. So you can kind of discount this entire, it's a farce, this entire list he's got.
So, Steven, I do want to say the Greatest Generation guys, and I did listen to this before we recorded, but they did a series wrap-up. They never did season wrap-ups, but they did a series wrap-up for Next Gen. And they ranked their favorite episodes and their most rewatchable episodes. And one of them singled out Justice as an episode they'd really want to rewatch. It was so much fun. And they're not. They don't have that same level of creepiness that sometimes creeps into our podcast. It wasn't for that. The guy that was talking about it just genuinely enjoyed it for reasons beyond the good-looking.
Well, it finished middle of the pack for that season for us, but it's been a great source of material for me as far as callbacks.
Worst episodes. Do we think those are legitimately the worst episodes, or is there another episode you think belongs down there with those 5?
I feel pretty good with those.
This is the first season. I feel like really we could say like we got it right roughly, because there's always something we disagree with. Other than I guess I did disagree. I said I would have put the Descent Part 2 down there. That would have bumped Bloodlines up, and yes, I'm comfortable saying Descent Part 2 is worse than Bloodlines in my opinion. Though it was outvoted. But
Masks is one of those that I remember not liking, but
it's terrible.
It was so crazy, but and it didn't finish quite at the bottom.
That brings up a good point, Steven. If I'm looking for where this season went bad, I'd say half of these episodes are bad.
Yeah.
Well, when we get to ranking the season, that'll be worth talking about.
I mixed up the Genesis is the episode I'm thinking of, where they're all turning into creatures, which we actually higher than Masks.
That's 14 of 25, and I think that's a bad episode.
That is, that's damning evidence.
I'm trying to decide where, because I usually like in my head draw a line of here's where the bad episodes are, and it's usually like 2 from the bottom, 3 from the bottom.
Interesting.
For this season, I think I would draw the line above Genesis for sure.
See, I think this is where this is where my point is being made.
Yeah.
I think we were handling the season like earlier seasons when it did, the same thing didn't quite work because they get sprinkled in there, and they get kind of pushed around. We don't even touch them again to say, oh well, it's better than this, or no, what's this one doing way up here? So it's going to be really kind of.
I would honestly say Genesis. Looking at the couple episodes above Genesis, for me, Genesis is where the season went bad, and that's number 14 of 25. So I think it had 13 episodes that were good-ish, at least, and 12 that I did not like. That's a full half the season. That's huge. That's like TOS season 3 levels, or not quite, but you know what I mean? Like, did not end strong.
Because I don't remember liking Eye of the Beholder either, and that's even above Genesis.
I just looked it up, and there were some things about Eye of Beholder I liked. But I'm looking at the other seasons, and there's not a single other season. I mean, Genesis is ranked the same place that Justice was ranked. Yeah. There is not a single other season in this series that I have that many episodes classified as bad.
Captain's Holiday, Masterpiece Society, Face of the Enemy, one of my favorite crazy episodes.
The Mind's Eye, which is very well regarded.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Outrageous Okada is 1 under in season 2. Loved Outrageous Okada.
Wow.
Yeah, this has more bad episodes than any other season of Next Gen.
And some of this might be recency bias in the bad way of like, oh, I remember how much I did not like this episode. Although Keith is, for you Patreon folks, he's showing non-recency bias by showing
Gray is going to be bad no matter how many years pass before we watch. I'm not watching it again. If I do a complete Star Trek rewatch, I'm not going to go that far. I was going to say I'd be willing to skip it, but I know myself and I would not skip anything. But that's the one I'd be most tempted to skip, perhaps.
Yeah.
So let's get into ranking this season versus the other seasons. I think I already kind of tipped a hand a little bit into say that I think it has more bad episodes than any other season.
A little.
No, and I'm looking at as much as I love the first 4 episodes, our bottom is season 1 right now. And next to last is season 6. I could not in good conscience put this above season 6. I can't. There's too many good episodes in season 6, in my opinion. Season 1, I'm gonna say this is the worst season of Next Gen.
Looking at it, I was feeling like, well, I feel like these highs are so high, but yeah, actually, when I was kind of just skimmed, I wrote not the worst season. I think so.
You think season 1 was worse?
I feel like when you look at just the pure numbers, if you will, season 1 does look better, and that's what we've got 6 right now, right?
So season 1 is 6th of 6 so far. What I think is the highs of season 1 are not as good as the highs of season 7. The highs of season 7, the first 4 episodes of season 7 kick all of season 1's butt. And that's where you're tempted to rank it, maybe not in dead last. But where the deciding factor for me was, where I drew the line at Genesis down is bad, that was Justice. And I could actually go down like 6 more episodes of season 1 and be like, those were pretty good. I would enjoy rewatching those. There's only like 1 or 2 episodes of season 1 that I think are terrible. And I think that's where I rank season 1 above this.
Yeah, like I said, looking across and seeing like you're down to the 17th of season 1, 11001001, which again, wouldn't say it was a great episode, but it was definitely
better than Phantasms.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Now I'm looking at like season 6 and like, well,
a Fistful of Datas is the same rank as 11001001 Phantasms. Also a bad episode.
Yeah,
but it was more fun. It was more fun than Phantasms. I don't know. I'm nominating it for last place. You two tell me where you'd want to put it.
I don't disagree. I do want to, to weigh in on the difficulty, I suppose, in comparing it to season 1, or rather the reason why it seems a little strange. Season 1,
we're also talking back 5 or 6 years, whereas the original series, we were looking back a year and a half. It's easier to rank 3 seasons versus these 7.
Right. Well, I was going to say that it's almost apples and oranges because of the way that they were sort of imitating TOS in the first season.
True.
That was the way we were looking at it before. It was just something seemed off, a little forced, and by the time we get to the final season, it's a completely different rhythm to everything. Characters have established a certain thing that they've found their voices, so to speak. Like on the strength of like a Worf alone, even though they weren't handling him as well as they had been previously, it's night and day compared to what they were doing in season 1.
Yeah, but is that enough to move the season ranking?
Right, I don't know, but it's I guess there's also the sense of grading it on a curve, or or rather, you might be a little more critical of the season 7 episodes because of that standard that had been set by then.
That's fair. That's fair.
There is something to, we expect better of you now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like I said, I understand the fatigue and we're moving on, but
as much as Generations gets kind of crapped on a bit, the first film that we're going to watch soon, I liked it better than I liked most of this final season. Like, I'm not saying it's better than those top 4 episodes of the season, but it's better than most of this season.
Yeah, and again, I wish, if these had been, one of my things was, notes I wrote about the last season was, highs were great, a lot of blah, and, again, I referenced this with Troy and Worf, like, I wish they'd taken bigger swings, like Committed, and it was a lot of, like, it wasn't quite Planet of the Week, Disease of the Week, but some of them kind of were, your Mass and your Phantasm and your Genesis, Bloodlines was disappointing. Yeah, it's just yeah.
So ranking, anybody going to disagree?
Nah.
I think the numbers, just trying to compare apples to apples, I think bears it out.
Last place.
Yeah. Which is ironically, I think the best episodes of this season are heavy in my top 10 or my top 7 or whatever. But yeah, I think I have a couple of them, and I could be talked into a couple others too. But
yeah, we'll definitely get into that more next week when we do the full series ranking. But I think we're where it needs to be. I do want to. Who was your standout character for this episode? For this season? Do you think? What character did you appreciate most in this final season?
Huh.
And maybe this is kind of like most improved player award. They go away in a lot of the sports stuff. Troy, for me, because I thought she finally got some stuff. Again, not perfect, but I thought, we talked about, I can't remember what episode it was, where it's like, oh, okay, Marina Sirtis is here now. They finally gave her something, and she was able to sink her teeth into it, rather than, we a lot of the Crusher and Troy episodes are like, guys, come on, give them something better. And I thought this season She is, and just her arc overall. I guess that's for the entire series, but for season 7, I thought, yeah.
I would
That's
probably
fair.
agree. I mean, like before you finish the sentence, I thought that's probably that's what popped into my head
Yeah.
as far as the most improved. Would have wanted it to be Worf, of course. I mean, there were some points, but that would have been like
Mm-hmm.
the previous season probably or prior one. Picard popped into my head because
Yeah.
of saving some certain things, as we've
Mm-hmm.
said that he was. We've said on several occasions, well, the episode didn't suffer because of him, or rather, he's the thing that saved it from this, or especially what was it, the evolution one, where they're
Yeah.
turning into
Genesis.
creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Genesis. Yes, that scene, just I can't even like fully see it in my head, but it makes me laugh even thinking about it. Just how what's somber the gravitas he brought to that moment of Data saying, "Oh, by the way, you're going to turn into what was it, a lemur or something?" It was just like that the understated reaction was so perfect of just that quiet panic.
That's funny.
So you're going with Troy, Picard?
Oh, me? I'll
Yeah,
go with
yeah,
Picard.
Yeah,
Well,
Steven went with Troy.
Yeah.
Riker, also, our guy Jonathan Frakes also, again, the best stuff. Everyone's doing great stuff. But yeah,
I think he was. I think Riker
nobody's
was.
best season.
yeah.
I think
No,
Riker was.
nobody.
Riker was way underused in this season.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Seriously, this was nobody's best season. At all 7 of the leads, you could point to a season where they were better, in my opinion, or they had more and got to showcase more. I definitely see the argument for Troy. I think I'm going to go with Picard because even the bad episodes, he generally did something impressive. I think Riker is an honorable mention because I think he had some really good parts in Lower Decks and All Good Things in the
Mhm.
Pegasus.
Mm-hmm.
Gambit parts 1 and 2, Picard and Riker all the way. Like,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go Picard best, Riker second, again with the caveat that they both had better seasons than this. As did Troy, as did Worf, as did Data, as did Crusher, as did everybody. This was nobody's best season, except for arguably Ro, even though it was only 1 episode.
Yeah.
I think it is my favorite Ro episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where it counts against her is she had more to do in earlier seasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ro might be the only character that this was her best season. It certainly wasn't Guinan's best season because she did not appear at all.
Wow. Yeah.
Aren't you missing Whoopi at this point?
Yeah.
The fact that they did not make room for her is
not
kind of egregious.
Is she by this point too busy, too big a star?
That's what I have to think. Or maybe they just decided to bide their time because I know like a lot of times it was last minute, like, oh, she's available this week, we'll work her in. That's happened in more than 1 episode in the past. And I do know she's got a decently sized role in the first film. So I think maybe they were like, can we bargain with you for that instead of trying to get you for episodes?
That makes more sense. I
She
feel like
has
she was
more screen time in the first film than like the whole series combined.
I feel like she was probably already too big, quote unquote, by before the series even started.
Before the series started, absolutely. She was only in the series because she asked to be. She wanted to be. She told Gene, I'd really like to be in it. And Gene's like, we'll make space for you, which is the absolute right response in the 1980s. If Whoopi Goldberg comes to you and says, I take that back.
I don't know if I would have used that
right
pun,
response. But, No, I take that back. It's the right response total. Like, if Whoopi Goldberg comes to a show now and says, I really like your show, can I be in it? You still make space for her, right? I think. I love Whoopi. So I'm glad Gene had the foresight in the 80s to be like, yep, we make space for you. I wish they'd made more space, but I do think part of that was her. I do think part of that was her schedule.
Well, some of there's probably CGI limitations at that point too about making space.
That's true.
Yeah.
There's only so much space can be generated.
They didn't have the big 3D wall that Discovery and Strange New Worlds have. Biden could have been in the background of every 10 forward scene if they filmed it now.
Yeah.
Huh.
Oh my God.
I hadn't thought of that.
I had not thought about till the second, but how much would that have enhanced every 10 forward scene if she was at least in the background? Or would have still been like, oh, I want to see her, I want her to talk. But if we just saw her in the background of 25 additional episodes, that would so cement her in a way I would love.
Yeah.
If they ever redo Next Gen again, I know they already did the money to upgrade it to HD and all that crap, but if they ever go through again, they need to digitally insert Whoopi in the background of most episodes.
I just
Like is which character? You know, like
Okay.
from like Sister Act or
I mean, in every 10 forward scene, she should be behind the bar. If she was a know-nothing actor, that's what would have happened. Every 10 forward scene, she would have been back there, but because she was Whoopi.
just a cursory search trying to find. I haven't been able to find a definitive reason for why she wasn't used as much. She did have a talk show going 92, 93, but that would have been season 6. But
yeah, I mean, it depends how late it went into 93 because they filmed half the season in 93.
Yeah, that's true too.
that makes sense.
I don't know what other films she did in 93, but yeah, she was a busy person. She was in demand. Love her. I'm glad that she is a major catalyst in the first Next Gen film we're going to watch in a few months. But also the only Next Gen film she has a sizable role in. But anyway, so that's your favorite character. Was there a Next Gen crew member that you were upset that felt they really got the shaft in season 7? I'm going to jump in first. I think Crusher. Sub Rosa's your one freaking episode this year. Crusher was done dirty. All Good Things, she had a okay plot. Like, it could have been so much better if they developed it, but they didn't. That she was so shoved to the sideline where she should have been more front and center in All Good Things with her relationship with Picard. I'm going to say Crusher's the one that got done dirty for this season.
I would have said Geordi, but I started thinking about how
Geordi's fair.
that All Good Things, that last episode. That was something I really loved. Really loved the interplay between he and Picard there at the beginning to usher things in.
Agreed. It almost felt like back retconning. Like, Geordi's a great character. He's friends with Picard. We've never seen it in 7 years. Let's establish it now.
Right.
Yeah. I think those are both good choices. Crusher makes sense because like I said earlier, like I just said, I thought Troy got more to do, better things to do finally than in other seasons.
Well, yeah, I guess that technically my answer would be Crusher then.
Yeah. I feel like some people may have done less than they did before, but not to be made invisible and have Sub Rosa be your number one, your main episode. Yeah.
I do want to wrap this up, but I'm looking at the annoyances. Keith did miss a big swath of season 7. He was absent for like 6 episodes in a row, but his repetition is he had Picard twice. I had Picard 3 times for most annoying. Steven only had Picard once, but the only character he had more than once was Baran in Gambit Part 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And Keith also had, the only other character Keith had twice was the pirate captain in Gambit Part 1 and 2.
Looking through season 7 and looking at my annoying person every week, I went with the annoying person season was mobs. That was my thing. It was I don't know if there was at least a couple episodes where the mob of the episode were the people I did not care for. And I know All Good Things Must Pass, or All Good Things, I should say. They were my least favorite, and there are a couple other ones where I did not like the crowd. So
I'm choosing the writers.
I thought about that too.
The only episode we all agreed on that I can see is Journey's End, that we all thought Wesley was super annoying. Oh, Bloodlines, we all disliked Jason, Picard's son.
Yes. Yeah.
Too solid. Oh, nope. Homeward, we all chose Picard. Huh? Keith, I'm sorry, I did not ask you. Who was your annoyance for the season overall?
I thought that's what we were covering just then.
We were, but then I started talking about where we matched up, and there were 2 or 3 episodes where we matched up.
I cannot bring it up in my head like at all. Like who was what? Let's see.
I mean, none of us are choosing leads so far. Steven chose the mobs, and I chose writers. So, I mean, Jason, we all agreed on. Picard, we all agreed on, but neither one of those is worth calling annoyance of the season.
I don't know who the. Sorry, I'm looking at the spreadsheet for the annoyances.
Poor Wesley, he had his highest and lowest score in the season. Technically he had other ones before the season.
Yeah.
But tied for lowest score. He had a 1 in the season. He had 2 appearances. He had a 1 in one and an 8 in the other. Again, I think it was the writer's fault, not Will Wheaton's.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
God damn. Now I kind of want to. I'm really upset that they did not do right by Wesley in this final season. The plot with the Traveler I approve of.
Right.
The stuff around that they couched it in is where I disapprove.
Mm-hmm.
The Native American stuff was handled so poorly.
Yeah.
The episode where he gets all riled up and then the Traveler's like, they don't matter, walk away. And he's like, okay, was so poor. Like, it was so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
The lead up at the beginning, just having him have to act all just
Sour and
yes.
That was rough. I mean, the only other character that even got close to a child rankings, because Wesley was an 8 in Journey's End. The second highest child ranking for the series was Molly O'Brien in a season 5 episode. I'm sorry, we should save that more for next week. Just for this season. Poor Wesley. Really, really gypped. Who are you having a drink with for this? Oh, sorry, Keith, I still didn't get, who was your annoyance for the season overall?
I was trying to scan some synopses here. I think the only one that's really jumping out at me is the AI from the Emergence.
Okay. From Emergence. Oh, I see. Yes. That was one that you and I agreed on. Steven chose the holodeck. But yeah.
It's pretty comparable in a way. I mean,
Absolutely. Who are we having a drink with overall for season 7? I will say repetitions. Steven did choose Beverly Crusher in both Gambits Part 1 and 2. He chose Troy 4 times in this final season. I chose Robin Curtis twice for Gambits Part 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Worf, three times I chose Worf. So he's probably the one I've chosen most frequently for this season. And Keith chose DePaul, which I believe was Robin Curtis's character for both Gambits Part 1 and 2. And then you don't have any other you chose Geordi twice and then Future LaForge. So I guess you chose Geordi 3 times. You were a Geordi fan in season 7. Who are we having a drink with for the season as a whole?
Probably DePaul then.
Robin Curtis's character?
I believe so.
I really loved her in that 2-parter. It made up for so much of Search for Spock and Voyage Home and how they gypped her.
Yep. I'll go Troy. I'll stay consistent.
Yeah. You definitely chose her a lot. I mean, I think I'm gonna go with Ro. I know it was just one episode.
Yeah.
She was the one Steven and I both chose for that episode. Mm-hmm. But I wanted so much more from her, for her, not from her, for her. And she did a really phenomenal job in that episode. Especially the Ro-Picard dynamic was so well developed in that episode. The only one I see that we agreed on across the board this season was B'Etor for Firstborn. We liked little Klingon B'Etor, Klingon woman. So anyway, that's where we end season 7. It's been quite a journey, but we're at Journey's End. Tomorrow, both an episode title and a TV special that I unfortunately watched. You two didn't. We're back next week. We're going to tackle Next Gen as a whole, compare it to how it ranks with TOS and the animated series, and go from there. Until then, live long.
Till season 8, and prosper.
There is no season 8.
Not yet.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?